Hello, everyone, and as always, welcome back to Strategy Gaming Dojo, where we're finding, learning, turning the great strategy games. And today I'm going to jump back into Gary Grigsby's War in the East 2 and into the Air War. Yet again, we venture into the skies. There are many, many things that I've learned about the air war just through my Let's Play, through reading, through looking at comments, and this is kind of in a response to a post on the great Facebook page, War in the East 2 fan community. Join it if you haven't. Um, but there's a poll up there asking, what are you struggling most with the air war? And in response to that, I wrote a message of some of the things I've learned, and I thought, you know what? Let's make a video because I make videos. That's what I do. So let's go through just a few things I've learned. Now, I'm not going to go back into the basics. Of how to move your, different air groups around or AOGs around. We've done all of that in other videos, but I want to talk about some more kind of advanced concepts as you get into the game and you start thinking about how to optimize your air war with the Luftwaffe or the Romanians or the Hungarians, whichever air force that you're commanding at the time. And so the first thing, I wanted to go back to turn one, and I know we've spent a lot of time on that, and I always say it's a little overrated how many planes you take out there. But that being said, it can really teach some important concepts, I think. So one thing we didn't talk a lot about was anti-aircraft fire. And anti-aircraft fire is just chewing up recon, and it's also really, really devastating bombers on this day one, much more so than it did in the first game. And my initial idea was it's just a lot more powerful, which I think is true. I think that they buffed it a bit. But also, we haven't really talked about it and looked into it. And I think, not that many people are thinking that much about anti-aircraft. But if it is more powerful, or if at least it's modeled better, let's say, it becomes a lot more important. And so I brought up the anti-aircraft screen. Now, this is showing you anti-aircraft out of cities and airfields and also in units. So in the Soviet units themselves, they can have anti-aircraft um, in addition to the anti-aircraft that's in cities. Of course, you have the same, right? As the Axis, we have anti-aircraft. Sometimes they're support units, sometimes they're actually integrated into the unit, into the division itself. So what are we seeing out here and what does it tell us? Well, first of all, you see the graphical representation of the anti-aircraft, of course, but the number on the left is the anti-aircraft capability of this. It could be unit, it could be multiple units. The number on the left is its capability against planes flying at under 20,000 feet. Okay, so in this case, a 1. The number on the right is above 20,000 feet. All right, so that's kind of your, deciding line. Now, with anti-aircraft, like these big anti-aircraft guns that we're talking about here, um, they get way up, above 20,000 feet now. Now, that didn't really seem to be the case in the first game. You could fly your recon aircraft out doing recon missions and they'd never get shot down. I don't know what the game modeled their altitude out, but they just wouldn't get shot down. Now they get shot down all the time. Well, this second number, if you're flying up at, let's say, 25,000 feet, is the important one. This one is the lower level one. Okay, so anti-aircraft. Now, if we're looking at the Soviet anti-aircraft capabilities here, you can see a little path through here that's got 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. We should probably try to fly over that. And then you'd say, well, okay, we're not going to get shot down at all. Well, maybe, maybe not. All right. Because there's one addition to that, and that is that anti-aircraft can fire into adjacent hexes. All right. But there's two rules around that, and that is if it's a unit anti-aircraft, so it's coming out of a Soviet unit, it will only fire into an adjacent hex if you're flying over 10,000 feet. You may say, huh? Why is that? Well, if you're 10 or 15 miles away, in the next hex, so 10 miles away at least, um, you're only going to see those aircraft and be able to fire at them if they're over 10,000 feet. It wouldn't be realistic if fighters or bombers are flying down here at 3,000 feet. If you're 10 miles away, you're not going to be able to fire at them. Okay, so what? Okay, second rule before I get into what all this means. The second rule is if it's attached to a city, like in Kaunas here, if it's attached to a city or an airfield, that goes up to 20,000 feet. So if you have anti-aircraft in Kaunas, um, and you have bombers or fighters flying right here, as long as you're under 20,000 feet in this hex, this anti-aircraft will not hit you. And that really explains why flying the Recons up at 25,000 is just getting us obliterated. And that's because every piece of anti-aircraft in the game can shoot at you, whether you're in its hex or in a hex next to it. So, take for instance, this one has very good lower level, under 20,000 feet. But let's find one that has a lot of the unit ones are under 20,000 feet where they have a good number here. Well, let's just take this 1-1 though. And let's say that we're flying at 25,000 feet. Well, it can fire at us if we're here, 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 here. So, if we're flying this path here, it's getting shots at us in at 25,000 feet, even though we're not even flying over its hex. And that is why the game originally sets up your bombing runs at 9,000 feet. Okay, why would it be that way? Well, because at 9,000 feet, none of the anti-aircraft from the units can hit you in an adjacent hex, and none of the anti-aircraft in the, let's say, town itself can hit you in an adjacent hex. Now, of course, they can still hit you if you fly right over their hex, but we'll get to that. So then, what would be the best path through here? Just looking through here would be to fly directly over these units at 9,000 feet. You're not getting any anti-aircraft from these hexes, any anti-aircraft fire, okay? These contiguous hexes here, you're not getting any anti-aircraft fire because you're below 10,000 feet, and they will only fire in neighboring hexes at 10,000 feet or above. Okay, now one additional thing to think about on these bombing runs is that even if we're flying at 9,000 feet, they come down to 1,000 feet to actually drop the bombs. Now, there's not a whole lot you can do about that. That's a natural mechanic of the game. Just something to keep in mind. They're going to be coming in low at 1,000 feet to drop these bombs if it's tactical bombing. Okay, so there's just not a whole lot you can do about that. You are going to take some anti-aircraft fire unless you hit someplace like this, right? It's got zero anti-aircraft capability below 20,000 feet. All right. It's got one for above 20,000 feet, but nothing for the lower. So if we fly a mission that goes over these hexes, we're going to get no anti-aircraft fire from these units. These units are not able to fire on us. And when we get out here, there's no anti-aircraft capability here either below 20,000 feet. Now, you may still lose a couple of planes. Why would that be? Well, units in this hex will fire other types of armaments at you. So if you're flying your plane down at 1,000 feet, which at a bombing run has to happen, um, they're going to fire other things at you and they may hit something, maybe by accident or not. It could be, an anti-tank gun that they fire at you and who knows, it may hit the plane. The other thing is when you fly lower, you take more operational losses. You may find this shocking, but when you fly planes, the closer to the ground you are, the more likelihood there is you run into something. And so you may take more operational losses. So you may be saying, Strategy Gaming Dojo, what do we do? How do we do these brilliant runs? Well, I'm gonna show you. That's what we do here. Okay, so we've got it. This is turn one. We're in air planning. Let's go to an air or I'm sorry, a ground attack from the air. And we'll do that with Luftflotte 1. Okay. And let's go out here and hit this airfield. Why are we going to hit this? Well, it's got a lot of fighters on it. For one thing, it's got 59 fighters. So this is exactly what we're looking for on turn one. All right. And that brings me to another point, a second point about all this, which is the order you put in your air directives does matter. And so when we originally set this up in our air war videos, we kind of mixed and matched. We put some ground support at the top, and then, I think we layered in some recon, and then if we got to a bomber, we just put it down to normal priority, but we kept the same order. Don't do that. Go to all of the fighter bases first, all right? And that will not only, we're going to set them at very high priority as opposed to where there are bombers on airfields, which we'll set on normal, but we'll also put all the airfield ones on top so that hopefully they all run first. Okay, so let's just click on there and we're going to do a ground attack there on these fighters at that airfield. So it's going to stage at Tilsit. We've got the, just the one on the area. It's going to hit that one hex. It's only going to do it on day one. Okay, intensity, it doesn't matter because it's only going to run two. You can only run two missions into a single hex per air planning or air execution phase, really. Altitude 9,000 is actually perfect. And I'm sorry we changed that before, but the more I'm learning about the game, the more I realize why they set it up this way. There's usually a reason why they set things a certain way, and 9,000 is just right. We're going to take this off of interdict and we're going to put it on airfield, okay? And then we're going to also say follow path. Now, this is not something we've done before. And let's take off our air units so we can really see what's going on here. Well, you see it all coming out of Luftflotte 1. That's not really how it goes down. It's essentially all these planes are kind of being commanded from here. Wherever they're coming from your bomber groups or your fighter groups, they are going to stage here at Tilsit, I believe. Yep, Tilsit. All right, it's right here, and you can see it where it starts to get rolling. Okay, now then, how do you change this path? So the purple path is the flight path on the way out. The green path is the flight path on the way back. All right, they can be different if you want them to be, but let's first of all talk about how you change them in the first place. And sometimes this can be a little hard to see, but you can see here, first of all, you have to say follow path, okay? Second of all, you have to click here, and when you do, you see a little red box that pops up here. Now, I said, we don't want to fly over this. It's got anti-aircraft capability below 20,000 feet. And again, you know, it only matters that 10,000 and 20,000 only matters if you're out here in contiguous hexes. Over the hex itself, this is showing you anything under 20,000 feet is getting shot at, okay? So we've now made that red by left clicking on it. Let's now left click here, okay? And we've changed our first waypoint over to here, all right? Now, if you do want these to be different, you can go back and forth between the two different boxes. There's a green box and a purple box, but I don't really see why you would have it come back a different way. I mean, there's probably a reason you may want to during the game at some point, but I don't think that's going to be very common. Okay, so we can click on either one of these and it's going to move both at first glance. You have to hold down a button to only move one of them. Okay, and we said we want to fly right over this. All right, let's do that. Let's now move the second waypoint. We've left clicked there. Let's left click again and voila, we're up here. And then the third waypoint will just move because we don't want to fly back over this one. And we'll go right there. And as this stands now, we're going to go here. We're going to fly over these units that have no low level or under 20,000 foot anti-aircraft. We're going to fly up here, woohoo, looking around the countryside, I guess. Then we're going to turn back here, okay, and then finally hit the actual base. And the base itself has no anti-aircraft under 20,000. We're flying at 9,000, so none of the units out here will hit us if we're contiguous to them. And any city, for instance, this is on an airfield. We're under 20,000 feet, and so it won't hit us as well. Okay, and that's how you flight path things to really lower your anti-aircraft losses. Now you're seeing we're not getting any escort here. Of course, we haven't put drop tanks on our fighters, which we also need to do. So if we're looking through here, we've got Tilsit, okay. We have a flight path. You can only do it twice. It's all going to be on day one. 9,000 feet. Very important you do that so you don't get chewed up by anti-aircraft. Uh, we're not going to worry about this. It should automatically send an escort on auto. And then we're going to click follow path. Yes. Click on the boxes and just give it waypoints out to its destination. All right. And then we've got it on airfield. We would just confirm that. Okay. And there you go. You've got that one. You could move on to the next one. Now I can tell you this is an airfield with more fighters. So we would click on that. We would say, okay, it's going to stage at Memel. What's the best way to get out of Memel? Well, as you can see, this is the best way. 0 and 0. We're going to fly right over that. This is also a 0 and 0. If this had, let's say, 2 and 1 or whatever, then we would want to change the waypoint here to go, let's say, there. And then, well, I guess we didn't need to change that one, but anyway. And we could change this one to go there, and it's going to go around that. All right. And so you're not going to get any anti-aircraft fire. Now, this says it's got a 2 for anything that's below 20,000 feet. So will it fire at us? No, because we're going to be running at 9,000 feet. It would only fire at us if we're at 10,000 feet. Okay. So two concepts there. Uh, that is the waypoints and anti-aircraft, how the anti-aircraft in the game works. And then also the order of your air directives. Put in the fighter airfields first, so you try to clear all of the fighters before you start hitting the bomber air bases. Because if you don't, if you've got fighters sitting here and fighters sitting there, and let's say there are bombers here and you go and bomb this air base, well, these fighters are going to try to intercept you, right? So we got to try to take the fighters out as early as we can. Now, is it completely foolproof? Of course not. If you go up to this one and bomb it first, fighters from over here may try to intercept you. But if we try to get as many of the fighters out of the way at the start, we should lose less and less. And then by using this method, we really avoid those losses from anti-aircraft. All right, so that is one point that I wanted to bring up. Okay, the second point I wanted to bring up is just on recon in general. Um, really don't run much recon. And you may say, well, wait a minute, I like to run recon. I like to know what's out there. I totally understand that. If anybody watched my War in the East 1 videos, they know I would spam recon and I would just run recon after recon. They never got shot down. Now they get shot down all of the time. Now, some of the same ideas that I just talked about with as far as altitude and pathing can certainly help, right? Because if and fly them at 9,000 feet. Again, you do not want to get that anti-aircraft, and I can flip back over here and put it back on. You do not want to get that anti-aircraft from contiguous hexes or surrounding hexes. That will just chew up your recon. And so when you do fly a recon, fly it at 9,000 feet. All right. And that way you will avoid the vast majority of, from side hexes. Now you are still probably going to get some unless you just do a perfect flight path. You probably will get some anti-aircraft because we have uncovered units out here, right? We don't know where all of them are because we haven't run recon. It's kind of one of those puzzles or riddles without an answer. Uh, so you are going to uncover some when you do recon, and you will get some anti-aircraft fire from them. But you can try to lessen that to the extent possible by running good flight paths and also running at 9,000 feet. All right, so you've got your recon aircraft out there. Um, but really, what are they telling you early in the game? Not much. And there may be some units hidden out here, some Soviet units, but really they're under strength. You're going to get around them. You'll have one unit that runs into them, but then the other units will go around them. And I compare this to a John Tiller game. Okay, in John Tiller games, there's something called surprise fire, or gosh, I can't remember the exact name of it, but basically what it is if you run into an uncovered unit, a unit you don't know about that you haven't gotten through, information from scouting or recon or whatever else, not by planes in those Civil War games, but in the Panzer games, if you run into one, they can fire on you immediately, even if they're on the defense. And I kind of like that, honestly. I think it's realistic. It makes you do recon and scout is, if you uncover a unit that you didn't know about previously, it fires on you. That is not the case in this game. Okay. And so the best way to do recon in the early game is to do it with motorized units, but really like motorized brigades. And I'm not sure, I probably should have found one here before I started talking about it. But you have these little motorized brigades that are under strength, really. I mean, they shouldn't really be attacking. Here's one. This is the Lair Motorized Brigade, okay? It's never going to have more than, I don't know, 10 or 12 combat value on the offense, but it's going to have 50 movement points if it's in full supply, full fuel. And so use this out here to do your scouting so you know where things are, and don't use your recon aircraft. And then the question is, well, why even have them? I mean, that's what recon aircraft are for. Save them. Hold on to them as the Axis, because you will have more important places to use them than in the first 10 or 15 turns of the war. In the first 10 or 15 turns, you're just flying. And all of these Soviet units, you don't really have to care what they are, because you're just going to run over them or go around them. Later on, once you get on the defensive, or even as you're planning an offensive on Moscow, let's say, or on Rostov, you will need that recon, especially if you're worried about a Soviet counterattack, to see where the Soviets are massing their troops. A perfect example is Stalingrad, right? You're in Stalingrad, you're like, hey, this is going fairly well. We're about to take, the rail yard, whatever. And all of a sudden, the Soviets, with 50 divisions, hit you from the north. You could avoid that maybe a little bit with TAC recon when you're out there. Once the front gets to a stalemate, then recon becomes a lot more important, because you can start seeing behind the lines where they're massing their troops. So hold on to your recon aircraft and almost kind of forget it in the early game. Okay, so that's point number two. All right, for point number three, I've moved back to our current Let's Play, one of the earlier saves. I think this was part 24 before we did that. We're still on turn 5 in the air planning phase. And once you're beyond first day bombing of the airfields, my recommendation now is to forget almost every other air directive completely except for ground support. Okay, so let's look at these directives. Now, this is before I had said, oh, well, I think that's what I need to do. Get rid of recon. And this goes back to what we just talked about, which early in the game, I don't think there's any need for air recon. You're literally just throwing airplanes into the grist mill. There's no reason for it. You don't. It's not adding anything to you really. That you can't find out with those little motorized brigades or your cavalry units. I should have mentioned that before. Those cavalry units that you have that are in your panzer groups, those are also very good for recon, getting out in front of your panzer divisions to kind of see where things are so you can go around them. But air recon's not needed. But let's go to Luftflotte 1 and talk about what is needed. And that is kind of how the Luftwaffe was actually used, okay? And that is for ground support. That is really what the Luftwaffe is for. It's not like the Western Allies with strategic bombing and trying to decimate the German industrial base. That's not what you're trying to do here. The Soviets essentially don't have one, and what they do have is way back by the Ural Mountains. So you're not going to strategically bomb it. You may do a little unit bombing in Leningrad and maybe a little bit in Moscow. But other than that, my recommendation is to do nothing but ground support with your Luftwaffe. And so we could move these around, but again, you want your fighters and your bombers as close to the front as you can get them. And then you want to do ground support for every single army or panzer group that's underneath your army group. So up here, Luftwaffe 1 is really the support for Army Group North, right? Now we could just run this as a straight up Army Group North. I do it as 3. Is there a great reason for that? I don't know. I don't know. Um, but I honestly would like to do it in order of their importance to me. So 4th Panzer Group, confirm. I mean, there's nothing else you have to pick here. Confirm, yes. Now let's get rid of 16th Army because we want 4th Panzer Group to be the most important. If it's going to give ground support to anything, please protect our panzers. Okay, and then we could go to Army Group North, and really the 18th Army is my second, most important thing in the north. So we would do that, and then we would just do ground support for the 16th Army and confirm that. Now, if you want to do this easily, okay, and this is it. This is all we would have in the north with one other exception, and that is up here in the area around Riga. You could potentially do 2 other things. One is you can take this Flieger Führer Aussie that I think currently have back here. Oh, you know what? I think the game moved this all the way south. It did. It's all the way down here. So let's just click on that and let's move it up here by Riga. So we can put it here and we'll just control and draw across there and we'll do an immediate transfer with these guys. I think we can do that by right clicking. No, left clicking. Oh, we have to go all the way back down to the unit because I'm on the air directive screen. Hold on. And I think if we right click here, we could do the execute air transfer immediate, okay? So with the Aussie unit, it's kind of your specialized naval ops unit. And I know we didn't talk a lot about naval ops, but if we show interdiction levels here, you can see the Soviets are interdicting out here at sea, making it very difficult for our transports to get up here with freight. It's carrying freight. Um, it makes it very difficult. So we want to get control over this area, and you can do it 2 ways, which is to put and we'll just, I guess, get off of this. Put this on naval ops instead of following an army. And then we can pick Riga, or we could pick this area if we want to get over here. Kurasare, okay, sure. Let's just put it on there for now. I generally start with Riga and then we go from there. And you can see in the Baltic, Kurasare, okay, it's going to be trying to get out here and even up these interdiction levels. As we strike back, you can see we've already put some in here. If we get to a level 2, it will show this in gray as a 2, and we can get more transport through here, okay? So you may want to do that mission. One addition to that is you can also run air superiority missions out here and shoot down Soviet bombers that are doing this interdiction. All right, and you may say, well, how the heck do I do that? Well, let's just do an air superiority really quickly. Superiority, left click on the map. All right, there it is. We can make this an area 5. We can tell it what days to run. Now it's telling us we don't have any aircraft that can reach there because we don't have the drop tanks on here, I don't believe, in this game. And so we can't get out there. That's why this is all clear. But if we did move, let's just say we wanted to do air superiority there, you can see, okay, we can do air superiority here. That's interesting. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, the point being is you can run those sort of missions if you want. I don't. I don't. I do the naval ops with this Fliegerführer Ostsee and try to get out here and do what you can so that we can get more into Riga. But other than that, nothing else. All I do is ground support. And I would do the same in the center, starting with 2nd Panzer Group, then 3rd Panzer Group, then I don't know, you can pick Ninth or Fourth Army, whichever flavor trips your trigger. But that is really how I think you should be running the air war for the entire war. Makes it very easy, right? All you have is ground support. There is a corollary to that, and it is something we, again, have not really talked about, and that is the air doctrine screen. Okay, let's go to ground support. Now, these are going to be important, and you can see 3 of 3 air directives are ground support directives. Okay, nice to know. If we go to Bomb City, 0 of 3. So what is this? What is all this in air doctrines? Well, this is just a general telling of the game how you want these kind of missions run, how you want overall these kind of air directives set up and run. Okay? Altitude, 9,000 feet. Everything from now on, I'm going to be running at 9,000 feet. Okay? Minimum weather. Okay? Partial escort, you would set in the actual directive itself. A lot of these you would, right? Intensity, schedule, you can do that all there. For ground support, these things don't really matter. They don't, you can't pick these. The game picks every single mission. You just give it the big general directive, do ground support, okay? But you can change these 3 things, well, these 4 things. You can change the weather, minimum weather requirement. The percent to fly, what does that mean? Well, that's how many ready aircraft you have to even contemplate doing a mission. If only 15% of your aircraft are ready aircraft, it will no longer run missions. It doesn't want to completely deplete the air groups or the AOGs, and so it will stop running missions under 20%. Okay, once it's come up with a mission, so let's say we're at 25%, so it's still going to do it. Once it's come up with a mission, this number, you're telling it how many of the planes that it wants. So let's say it picks the perfect mission and it needs 6 bombers. How many of those planes, what percentage of those number of planes need to be ready to go out and do it? In this case, we've got 100%. You could tell it we can also run partial missions. Even if you think we need 6, we can do them with what 5, okay? And that is how you set this. But let's say the game says that I want to do it with 6 planes, and you say, you know what though? If you think 6 is good, I think 7 is good, and I don't want you to do it. I want you to do it with 7. So basically, what this is a base number of what the game would normally run the mission as. So in my example, let's call it 10. Okay, the game would normally run the mission with 10 bombers. Now you're telling every mission you would run with 10, run with 12. All right. If we change that to 80, every mission that you would run with 10, run with 8. And that's mission percentage. Escort percentage works almost identically. And that is how many fighters are we going to send based on the base of what the game thinks it should send. So if the game thinks it should send 10 fighter escorts, if you bump this up to 120, it will send 12. Okay? And that's escort percentage. And so I, from now on in this game, are running this escort percentage at least 120%, and I'm currently testing with 140%. Why is that? Well, early in the game, and this is only for the first 15 turns, early in the game, you have superior aircraft, superior pilots. However, the Soviets will try to interdict well, intercept your missions, your ground support missions. The more fighters you have out there, the more you can just chew them up and really pretty much destroy what's left of their air force after day one bombing. And so, mission percentage, that's fine. Keep these at 100. We would do Luftflotte 4 the same way, Hungarian Command and Romanian Air Command to only do ground support. Keep the mission percentage 100, percentage to fly, that's fine, but escort percentage, bump all of these up 120, 140, 130, whatever, whatever number speaks to you. Pick your lucky numbers, play the lotto, whatever you want to do, but put these at 120 for escort percentage for ground support in your air doctrines. Okay, so that's one more point. Let's get to the final one. All right, final point is on transport aircraft. And transport aircraft seem to be causing people some head scratching a bit, and I fully understand. Now, in this game, I didn't really know what the heck I was doing with them. In the old game, you just clicked on a button and all of a sudden you right clicked out here somewhere and it just dropped things on people's head. That's not really how it works this time around or how you should be doing it. And for this, let's actually get over to a game where we're in the airplaning stage. So I'll be right back, or I'm sorry, in the ground stage. I'll be right back with you. Okay, and so that actually brings up the first point, which is freight transfer or any kind of transport with your aircraft actually happens during phase 4. There's, really ground support and transport both happen during the ground phase, which makes sense, of course, for ground support, but for transport, I guess it can make sense. Now, that means it's happening after the logistics phase and it's happened after all of the air planning and air execution phase. You're now moving your troops around. You can also start to transport supplies. And so let's go and look. What you'll have to know is to turn on your air units so you can actually, or the icons, so you can actually see where your AOG transport is. Here, Transport Group North. In this game, I have moved north to Riga. That's actually not a good choice. And why is that? Well, Riga does not have enough freight stored up for the transport group to activate or be able to carry freight out of Riga. What does that mean? Well, you have to at least have 400 tons of freight. So 400, let's get off that for a second, we hover over Riga and we see down here, well, we don't even have this depot built up enough. We've just taken this depot. Now you see it's a depot import port. It's got rail, but it has not built up anything yet. It will not until the next logistics phase, okay? So what are your main goals on where to locate your transport group? Well, you're kind of looking for three things. That is a huge depot. Okay, so let's say Königsberg is a huge depot. We want a huge depot that is going to always have freight in it, at least over 400 tons. Now, how can we guarantee that? Well, you have to bump up that depot so that it's not sending all of it out. And when I say bump up, I mean by priority level. You really need it to be a level 3 depot. So it is going to store some of its freight. And if we look here, it's a depot. Let's get over to this screen. There we go. Um, Now we can see all that. You have to be on logistics to see this other information. Now, as you can see, it received 7,200 or 7,000 tons of freight. It stored 869. That was before the logistics phase, though, because it ended up sending out a lot of that freight, and it's down to 281. So it does not have 400 of freight that you need to fly out of here. Okay, so how could we fix that? Well, we could click on Königsberg and actually take that to a 3. And you may not want to do this. This is why eventually, this is why I have it sitting up in Riga. We're eventually going to, have Riga be where we transport. But you could bump this to a 3 so it stores more freight and you always have enough to transport. Okay, but let's just run a transport mission. How do you do it? Now, it's not going to be with Transport Group North. It's going to have to be with one of the ones in the south that can actually go get freight, or Transport Group North can fly to some other airbase and pick up freight if there's enough there. But the game will kind of decide that in some ways. What do? Well, you pick F9. Okay, so this is airborne transport. You can do freight units or airborne. We're doing freight. We're on freight here, and you left click on the map to pick your destination. Now here is the most important. Well, it's 1B of the most important. Number one is where you have your transport aircraft located. The second one is you really only want to transport freight to another airfield. Okay, you can drop it out here on top of this rough terrain if you want, and the game will put a little temporary depot there. But if you do that, it's going to be very inefficient. Okay, so left click on a place that has, you want to go airbase to airbase with your freight. It's just like UPS when they fly your overnight packages about. You don't really want them landing out here in Molskala, with a little temporary depot. You want them coming into a big airport, then it can get on the trucks out to where it's supposed to go. So we would left click there, okay, and when we do that, it's going to tell us based on where we want to go and how we have our transport aircraft set up. Like I said, I do not have it in a good location right now in the north, but eventually this would stage out of Riga once we have this built up. But for now, it's telling us Lebau is the best place to stage out of. That is right here. It seems to have enough freight to run a mission. And you can do this as one mission or multiple missions if you want to send it up there, across several missions. And the game will set this up. It will go ahead and pick the most ideal aircraft to fly it, air groups, I should say, to fly it. Okay, and I don't know what these are out of. We can click on it and find out. Um, this is in Transport Group North. Okay, so Transport Group North is now flying south all the way down here to LeBeau. Well, you can see that actually in purple. It's flying all the way down here to pick up the freight, and then it's flying all the way back up here. Again, not very efficient. It may be better, and let's click off of here for a second. Um, can we transport? That's actually a great question. Can we transport an air or move an air group? I think we can. During the ground phase. Okay. Can we move it down here? We don't want it on that base. We want it right on LeBeau. There. Okay. Let's do an immediate transfer. Yeah, let's put you down there. Okay, excellent. Now let's go back to F9 and let's say we want to go up here and drop freight off. Yeah, okay. Now it's gonna, for whatever reason, it wants to come over here and stage at Königsberg, but that's a lot less air miles to get up here, right? And now it said staging base is Königsberg. Okay, it's gonna pick those same two. What are these other two? These are in, yeah, these are in the ones in the south. All right, or in the center. I just can't remember. But we're gonna pick the two from the north, or the game already has done that for us, and it's going to fly this mission and drop freight off. And all you have to do is either hit launch or multiple missions to spread it across several. Let's just do one mission, and then it'll tell us exactly what happens. We had 76 transport aircraft. They air transported freight right up here, 114 tons of it. Now 81 tons. No, it's bringing more. I didn't say multiple missions, but it flew two. I think each different air group flew one, right? Now watch out. There's some interdiction here in the sea. I don't think they can shoot you down, but if they're running an air superiority mission here, they could. Or actually, from up here, they could run fighters down here. So be careful with your transport aircraft. But now we have transferred 114 tons of freight here. And if you see down there, received, so we did 114. I think the other one was like 80 or something like that. Received 195, stored 192. All right. And when we go through the logistics phase next time, it will send some of this out to the units. And so, again, the two main rules are put your transport group at a big airfield with a big depot, up that depot maybe to a level 3, but certainly to a level 2, so that it has enough freight to transport after the logistics phase, and then always fly it into other airfields. All right, close to the front if you want, or a little further back. If you think this depot needs some more, you can fly it there or back here, wherever you want. But make sure it's got an airfield. This does not have an airfield. Would not be a good location. It's a lot less efficient. And with that, I'm going to say, hey, it's tips and tricks time. Just some things I've learned. I'll keep adding to these as we go on in the game. I hope you enjoyed this. I know I did. This is Strategy Gaming Dojo. I'll talk to you next time. Have a good one.